Welcome. Representation is one of the things that we focus on in this show. I've already spoken a lot about the political systems in our nation, which are used by our representatives. Now, I've heard from mutual friends, and I also know from my own experience in talking with you that you know a good bit about US politicians. So, we're going to start off with some basic questions, and we're going to lead up to trying to find the answer to how we as voters can know more about our representation. So, the first question, who are you and what do you do?
So thanks for having me on. My name's Titus Desjardin. Currently, I'm a teaching assistant and a graduate student at the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg. I'm working on an MRIS and an MA in anthropology. A lot of the research I do actually centers on nutritional information chains, in the Mississippi Pine Belt. So I spent a lot of time focused on some of the different community obstacles, community perceptions of different birthdays, what kind of programming might be beneficial in trying to alleviate some of those resulting health issues. Aside from that, and a bit more related to the issue at hand, I guess I consider myself a little bit of like a political observer, amateur. I'm not like some kind of commentator or anything like that, but it is something I spent a lot of time on. Describing what that means exactly to me is a bit tough because I tend to shy away from like labeling myself too specifically. But I'd say that I tend to have maybe more progressive inclinations. And I think that a lot of those beliefs have led me to focus a lot of my attention on government transparency and accountability.
Okay. It sounds kind of similar to a little bit of my own where I look at things. So when did your interest in the political scene start?
So I kind of feel like I've been surrounded by politics almost my whole life. I grew up in a house where very often there was like talk radio playing in the background. There was a radio station specifically called WWTN where I grew up in the Nashville area. It's probably most famous for being the place where Dave Ramsey, who's like the financial guru type guy, got his start. But it also had a bunch of guys like Phil Valentine, Mark Levin, a lot of very, I guess, kind of in the same vein as a Rush Limbaugh type. Mike Huckabee was one of the shows that they had on, who now he's currently the US ambassador to Israel. So like they were pretty notable within this specific sphere. I would say that it was about the 2018 midterms whenever I began to focus more on politics for my own sake. I kind of had this view of politics or elections as being these kind of ideological battlegrounds. And so it became very important for me to make sure I had the knowledge to be able to engage with these concepts because they are things that do a lot to affect people's day-to-day lives. So that kind of marked the beginning of my going down the rabbit hole, or what you want to call it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I imagine that's probably around the time you were able to vote. I assume would probably have an effect on, yeah. So I don't know if you want to do this as a number or like a percentage or what, but roughly, how many current senators or representatives do you think you could name?
So as far as the federal government goes, I might eat my words in a second.
You're gonna have to prove it later. So
I think I could probably name every US senator. I don't know about representatives. They're a bit tricky because they just tend to have a bit less power, a lot less distinctive qualities. I think I could probably name one from each state, though.
impressive, because I could probably it's probably in the single digits for me. Well, maybe not. Well, I don't know. See, I focus more on like systems and laws. It is valuable, of course, to learn more about the actual people who represent us. So I'm really grateful to meet somebody who's able to focus on something that I'm not able to or just haven't had the time to. So that's really cool.
I gotta say briefly, for what it's worth, I do think that at that point in my life, I was overboard on the learning about people side as opposed to the system side. So these value in both, but I think it's easy to go overboard into just like memorizing factoids, that kind of thing.
So how much time on average do you spend learning about politicians per week?
It's a bit of a difficult number to give because I have gravitated away from like specific politicians. It has upticked in the past couple of months because the 2026 primaries are coming up and I follow elections like a hawk. I probably spend 2 to 3 hours in a given week specifically focused on individual politicians or candidates for office.
How does that number change if it's an election year?
Honestly, primary season is the season when I pay the most attention because, frankly, in a lot of places, the primary election is going to be your election, which it is, saying it like that might sound a bit cynical, but unfortunately, there are a lot of districts that are just very, very unlikely to be competitive when it comes down to the last two options on the ballot. And so I think it's very important in kind of this season to begin thinking about it, oftentimes more important than the general election.
Gotcha. So it sounds like that's a lot of work that you do in learning more about people. What motivates you? What gets you the urge to go study these people or study politics and spend hours out of your week? Not everybody does that. So like what makes you want to do that?
I think for a long time it was this very idealistic, maybe a little bit naive view of what politics was, and like this idea that this battle of ideas and whoever has the best ideas is always gonna come out on top. So we need to be paying attention to the ideas, the people who are promoting that. Like these, no one who would bother me more than someone who I agreed with, but who I thought was like a bad messenger. That's something that's changed over time. I would say that that was when I already began to observe a lot of these factoids. And so nowadays, I think my motivation is a bit of an obligation, but it's more an obligation in the sense that I'm trying to maintain the information that I put up then, because there are times when it can be helpful as opposed to necessarily building up that information because I think it's what everybody else should be focusing on, or even that I think it's like something uniquely important because ultimately I don't know whether it is or isn't. I think there are uses. I think it's also ultimately more important for people to be engaged in whatever way they feel they can contribute best. And it's not going to be this for everyone, but it is something that makes for me.
Yeah, that's very well said. So, what are the methods that you use to learn about the politicians and politics generally?
So I have a couple of sites that I really like to use. GovTrack.us and politicalintegrity.us. GovTrack is a resource that basically allows you to go and view all of the different legislation being proposed by Congress. So that means you can go and you can read the individual pieces of legislation. You can see how they've been voted on. You can see where they are in the approval process. So is this piece of legislation that people are talking about, but it's not actually going anywhere yet? Or is this something that's actually maybe gonna become a law? And then you can even track the specific pieces of legislation that a politician has proposed or worked on getting passed into law. One of the more recent resources I've been using is called the Integrity Index. That's the one that's done through politicalintegrity.us. It's run through a group that's focused on eliminating dark money in politics. And so they track the financial assets of members of Congress, they track stock trading by members of Congress, campaign corporate donations, and super PAC money. And they also track political stances that different representatives have on things like lobbying and those types of issues.
I love that. I'm gonna check those websites out. And actually, I'm gonna like overlay because those both sound like great things that people probably are yearning for, even if they're just flipping through shorts or whatever and they see somebody accuse somebody else or whatever. I'm really glad and grateful that you put those in there. What advice would you give to a beginner who maybe they grew up in public education and they already know a little bit of the basics, but haven't really learned that much since that point in time and they want to get back into it?
Having a bit of a refresher is important. I kind of would disadvise people from starting by like consuming too much of the news or too much of just like what people are saying, because people in news are usually very focused on things that appeal to your emotions, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that sometimes people will talk about issues in ways that ain't super relevant. So, like yesterday, I was online and I saw this whole thing about a congressman who's proposed that like puppies are better than Sharia law act. And a whole bunch of people are going off about this. And like, not to say that doesn't maybe deserve some skepticism, but that's not a serious piece of legislation that's about to get passed into law. And so recognizing what the process of that becoming a law is, recognizing the different checks and balances that different pieces of the government have on one another, recognizing who do I elect, who do the people I elect, who are the people in the capital who aren't elected at all, who those people are, what the positions are. I think that's pretty fundamental before you get into individual people. When you do get into individual people, I begin locally, so who's representing me in Congress? Everyone's going to have, well, everyone who lives within the 50 states is going to have 2 senators from the state, and you're going to have 1 representative from the district. So 2 people in the Senate, 1 person in the House. And those are people you should probably be able to name off the top of your head. So for me, where I grew up in Tennessee, it's Senators Blackburn and Haggerty, and it's Representative Ogles. Where I am now in Mississippi, it's Senators Wicker and Hyde-Smith, and it's Representative Izard. And those are the people who be speaking for your community, and so those are the people who you have the most power to influence one way or another. They're the people who you maybe even run against if that's something you're interested in, or support a candidate who's against. And by the way, that's not just federal, it's also knowing who the governor is, knowing who your mayor is, knowing who's on your county board of education or what have you, because again, a lot of change happens locally, probably more than we give it credit for.
That's excellent. And you already answered the next question too. Really last like core question before we get to the rapid round. We'll see how that goes. No pressure. But what types of information would you say are probably most important to learn for a beginner?
It's tough to give specific information like this is what you need to know about a politician, because that would just be me telling you what my values are. It's like what information's important. What I think is important isn't going to be what everyone else thinks is. If you do want to learn specific information about different politicians, they always have campaign websites. If you want kind of a broad overview, that's a good place to start. You do need to keep in mind, of course, when you do that, that a campaign website is where a person is selling themselves. That's where they're gonna try and make you feel something. They're gonna want you to look at that list of items and go, oh yeah. And so they're not necessarily the most polished things out there. They can play into a lot of political rhetoric, but it also tells you a lot about a politician if that's what they're doing. One of the things that stands out to me is if you have a politician who is focusing within the campaign on specifically local issues. So someone who I think is a very good example of this is Lisa Murkowski, who's a senator in Alaska. If you go to her campaign page, she definitely has some of those typical Republican talking points, but she's also talking about Alaska's indigenous population. She's also talking about Alaska's fishing industry. Those are things that aren't big focuses in like nationwide political debate, but they are things that matter a lot to the local communities that she represents. One of the other things that I would focus on is some of the issues that don't fall explicitly along partisan lines. So is this someone who has a stance on congressional stock trading? Is this someone who's interested in imposing term limits on members of Congress? Is this someone who supports like a single-payer healthcare system, or another stance that doesn't fall perfectly within the bounds of one party?
Okay, so for the audience's sake, I will say the next part of this is going to be what we call a rapid round. So I'm just going to name out a bunch of states and positions and see if you know it. And we're going to give you a scoreboard. I wanted all this hard work that you've done over the years to not go unnoticed. So, did you prep in any way for this part?
I did not prep for this part at all, so
Gotcha. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna ask an even 10. First state, Wyoming. Who are the two senators and who is a representative?
Um, the two senators are John Barrasso and Cynthia Loomis. The representative is Harriet Hagman, who's actually running for Cynthia Loomis's seat because Cynthia's leaving.
All right. Well, I was gonna ask for like an extra detail, but you just like threw those out there anyway. All right, cool. What about Massachusetts?
Massachusetts, the senators are Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren. Um, they have several representatives, so let me think. Jake Oceancross is up there. I think Bert Keating is up there. Catherine Craig, who's the deputy. I don't remember the title, but like basically second in command of the House Democrats is from Massachusetts. Ayanna Presley is from Boston, so there's several of them who are pretty notable.
I only asked for one, but all right, showing off. No, I'm just kidding. What else? Let's say Washington State.
Senators are going to be Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell. Uh, Representatives Dan Newhouse is one who comes to mind. He's one of the last remaining Republicans in the US House who voted for the impeachment of Donald Trump, if you want kind of a fun fact about him. So it's kind of notable that he's still around because most of those people didn't last.
How about Florida?
Florida senators are no longer Marco Rubio. He's Secretary of State now. Ashley Moody and Rick Scott got a bunch of representatives too. Let's think. Byron Donald is one. He's running for governor of Florida. Jared Moskowitz is a Democrat who's kind of got himself a bit of a national profile, has a lot of good sound bites, that kind of thing.
Ready? Let's see. Maybe an easier one, I theorize. Texas.
Texas, Ted Cruz, and John Cornyn, who is in a very precarious election at the moment. One of the guys in that election is another one of Texas's representatives named Wesley Hunt. Um, some of the other, oh, let me think who else is from Texas who's relevant. Oh, Jasmine Crockett, she's a pretty big name in the Democratic Party right now.
Didn't realize she was from Texas. All right, we're halfway there, and you've already got a lot of extra credit, I think.
That's not the goal, but
Yeah. All right. Colorado.
Sean Hickenlooper and Bennett. I don't know his first name actually. I is it Michael Bennett? My head is saying Michael Bennett, except Michael Bennett is a guy I know in real life, so I don't think it's him.
I gotcha.
Hickenlooper and Bennett, and then representatives. Gabe Evans is, I think, the newest one, who is a Republican who represents a pretty swingy district. Definitely one that the Democrats would be targeting in this next cycle.
Gotcha. California.
California, Alex Padilla and Adam Schiff. Representatives, there's a bunch of people in California. The biggest one would be Nancy Pelosi. Pete Aguilar is another one. He's one of the other House leaders of the Democratic Party right now.
New York.
New York, Chuck Schumer who's the Senate Majority Leader, and Kirsten Gillibrand. So representatives from New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a big one. Elise Stefanik is a big one, who was in House Republican leadership until very recently. Several notable New York politicians.
As probably always in our history.
Yeah, probably.
Greatest city in the world.
So they say.
Anyway, two more. No pressure. This is my home state of Indiana.
Um, oh goodness. This isn't where I shut down, is it? Banks. Jim Banks is one of the senators, and who's the other one? Todd Young. And then representatives, let me think. Erin Hooch. I don't know how to say her name actually. Houchin. She's one of the newer members of Congress. Frank, lots of names in Indiana I don't know how to pronounce. Mervan, Mrvan. He represents kind of Chicago area crossing over into Indiana.
Very good. I'm excited to see. I'm guessing you're probably right. You sound right. I would say you were, but we'll see in the edit because then I can fact check you. No pressure.
I haven't said anything I think is wrong, but if I did, I wouldn't say it, so I'm still upset I can't remember Bennett's name.
Yeah. All right. Last one, probably your crossing the finish line, easy one, but Tennessee.
Tennessee, my home state. Yes, Senator Marsha Blackburn and Berhagurji, um, who both suck, and you can put that in the video if you want. I'm okay publicly saying that one. And my representative, Andy O'Waters, who's based in both of them.
I'm with you there.
Tennessee doesn't have a good track record, unfortunately. And I'm not just saying this because of like the political party or how our specific district has a history of sending like people with pretty major ethics scandals to Congress, and that's not really what I would like for us to be known for, but that's where we are.
Yeah. So thank you.
Of course.
I'm excited to fact check you. Let's wrap it up. Do you have anything you would like to ask me or to say to our audience?
Yeah, I guess that if I have like some kind of ending message on this, it would just be as much as this kind of vigorous kind of stuff can be at least kind of fun to engage with in a certain capacity. I think it's also important to focus on like these very real people are taking very real actions that affect tens, hundreds of millions of Americans. And frankly, people across the entire world. It's good to know who they are. Knowledge doesn't get you very far if it's the only thing you do. Community action, finding local organizations, finding local candidates who you can press for, and fighting for accountability, transparency, regulation on the ability of politicians themselves to empower themselves through the position. I think all of those are things that are very important to be actively fighting for. So at least one big message, that's what I would leave.
I like that. That's a good message that does speak and align with our channel's mission. So thank you for talking with me, despite all the struggles with the power going out and everything else. Thank you for letting me test you publicly on your knowledge of things, because that could be really hard. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It was good to be able to talk, catch up a little, all of that.